Well, we'll get started and we'll see if anyone else wanders in here. But the topic for today's forum was an interesting one that sort of popped up in the discussions of the Adult Ed Committee that plans these events. Here's a plug if you want to be on the Adult Ed Committee and help imagine some of the conversations that take place in this time on Sunday mornings, or some of the other things. We do book studies. If there's some other kind of educational project that you would like to bring forward. Carol Swanson serves as the committee chair and has continued and done that for a number of years now. And we think about all kinds of different things. And so this day of Transfiguration, the day the church celebrates Transfiguration, it was suggested that we, and I kind of came late to the conversation, somehow I ended up being the one to deliver this topic. I had to remind myself that even though my undergraduate degree was in business and hospitality business, my school had a really strong ethic of liberal arts education and required us to take coursework in the the arts school and the more in the humanities. And I took a couple of an art class and an architecture class, and so I had to really dig down deep into the recesses of my brain to kind of remember what it was like to sort of be instructed in art appreciation, art history. I'm really grateful that I did take those classes, because I think it has made me a much more curious person in the world, especially when it comes to architecture. That class I took as an undergrad really, I can't, hardly a day goes by that I'm not paying attention to some architectural detail in the world around me. So maybe in another life, I'll come back and be an architect. Wouldn't that be nice? And so, but today, the Transfiguration is a marvelous story. We'll reread this story for those who didn't worship at 8:30 here in just a minute. But we're talking. This is an art class today, an art history, an art appreciation session to invite conversation. You're sitting in little conversation pods intentionally, so you haven't introduced yourself to your table mate or your pod mates. Be sure to do that at the first chance I invite you to do that. But for the start, we're just going to do some sort of large group conversation to get the wheels primed here a little bit. So I've got a question for you. If I can get my slides on it. What's the most famous painting in the world? Just shout it out. Yes, somebody. Yeah. Anybody who want to argue that? Nobody wants to argue the Mona Lisa, right?
Tomato can.
Yeah.
What's that?
The tomato can.
It's Warhol. Andy Warhol's yeah, probably. I mean, a very recognizable piece of art for sure. The Mona Lisa worldwide, like there's just something powerful about that. But raise your hand if you've seen it, your eyes have gazed upon it hanging on the wall at the Louvre in Paris. Yeah, so half a dozen of you have seen it.
There's a soup can. Somebody threw soup at it.
Recently, somebody threw the soup at it. There's been a number of sort of vandalism attempts, right? And a couple times where they have actually succeeded in sort of damaging the painting. So where does it hang now? It's still in the Louvre, but behind a bulletproof sheet of glass, right? Recessed into the wall, so that if there's some sort of terrorist threat, they push a button and like the Constitution goes down into the if you've ever been to see the Constitution of the United States at the archives, it drops into a vault. There's a similar mechanism at the Louvre now for the most famous painting in the world. But did you know? Oh, and here's a picture of what if you go to see the Mona Lisa. This is your experience, right? There it is. In all of its glory, behind the big sheet of glass in this slot on the wall. This is an older picture. I guess it's, if you've been recently, it has a new display. Anne was telling me that the wall apparently has been painted blue now, and why blue, I don't know, but anyways, but this was my experience, absolutely. Trying to get a glimpse of it, just a huge crowd of people standing in front of it. Everybody's got their phones out, trying to get a picture of it, get a picture of a picture, right? And yet here's this beautiful painting right here on our screen. We don't have to go to Paris to enjoy the Mona Lisa. Beautiful, you know, and celebrates one of the greatest Renaissance painters of all times, Leonardo da Vinci. But did you know that the fame of this photograph did not become arguably the most famous painting in the world until 1911, when it was stolen. Oh, I thought I had a little thing in it. It was stolen in 1911 from the Louvre, and they recovered it in 1914. And that story, that drama, is what propelled the Mona Lisa into the public consciousness. There were obviously reproductions of it, you know, shared in the newspapers all over the world, you know, all of this dramatic story, and people took note of it. And the relative lengths they went to recover it, all of that. It's a tremendous story. I'm not going to tell that whole story today. But so that begs the question, before 1911, if I asked you what the most famous painting, what's the most well-known, most celebrated painting in the world? Yeah, good guess. No. Great guess. Yeah, great guess. No, it was this. Anybody got a guess? What's the subject matter? Very good. Subject matter. Another champion of the Renaissance, Raphael. Raphael painted this in Italy under commission of the Catholic Church. Actually, the Medicis. This is probably his last. It's believed to be his last and greatest work. It was completed in about 1520, and he died shortly thereafter. It is you saw the scale of the painting of the Mona Lisa. It's, you know, like this. You know, looking at that thing. Well, this is I think technically ginormous. It's, you know, 12 feet across, 20 feet high, kind of a thing. More on that in a minute. But this was the most celebrated. Partly because it didn't just stay in Italy. Napoleon Bonaparte brought it from Italy to Paris in the late 1700s, and it was seen by lots of people as a result, and celebrated. So we're going to use this painting of Raphael's Transfiguration as sort of our primer for art appreciation or whatever, but we need to understand the subject matter a little bit. So let's just, who out there, well, maybe I should do it because I've got the microphone. All right. So this is from the Gospel of Mark in the 9th chapter. 6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John and led them up a high mountain apart by themselves. And he was transfigured before them, and his clothes became dazzling bright, such as no one on earth could brighten them. And there appeared to them Elijah and Moses, who were talking with Jesus. And then Peter said to Jesus, "Rabbi, it is good for us to be here. Let's set up 3 tents, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." He did not know what to say, for they were terrified. Then a cloud overshadowed them, and from the cloud there came a voice, "This is my son, the beloved. Listen to him." Suddenly when they looked around, they saw no one with them anymore, but only Jesus. All right, Art Appreciation 101. There are probably lots of systems for sort of like I learned to appreciate wine, there's a system that I go through that I follow when I kind of evaluate and taste wine and think about wine and all that kind of stuff. Same is true for art. Everybody has a system. I would say this is a pretty common flow, but maybe the language is different, and maybe you've experienced other stuff in your life. But it's helpful to just sort of have a little bit of a system to kind of work through that. And so we're going to do that out loud as a group with this painting. Five steps we're going to walk through. First step: describe what you see. So what's going on in this picture? Who wants to take a stab at just describing? Now, I want to caution you, you know a lot, but just keep it simple. What is it that you see in this picture? Don't assign names yet, or don't assign action that was attached to that scripture that we just read, but just what do you see? Does anybody want to take a stab at that? Gene, go for it. You see light. Yeah, you see a lot of light. Where is the light?
Center.
In the center. Yep. Yeah. What else do you see, Peter?
Two people dangling
There-
in the air.
There are some people who are not rooted on the ground. They're levitating, right? Yeah, absolutely. How many people? 3. Yeah. And then you see some other people. How many other people do you see?
4.
It's probably a little small. There's actually 2 figures over here, but there are 3 laying on the ground here. Yeah. And they're helpfully, they're dressed in different colors. And then there are 2 off here in the shadows a little bit. Anything else that you see?
Shading their eyes.
Yeah, the position of they're shielding their eyes as if something is really bright, right? Yeah. And then what do we see off in the distance? Some trees. And then if I could blow this up for you more, you'd actually see like a landscape of like the town off in the distance there, which suggests what about this spot? It's elevated, right? Yeah, you're at the top of something, right? Yeah, yeah, very good. Yeah. Anything else you want to say about this? That we would just
Raphael wasn't a literalist.
that Raphael was not a literalist,
Correct.
right?
I mean, he didn't follow Mark exactly.
Right, yeah. In fact, this story, the Transfiguration, appears in the other synoptics, and so there's is it in John? No,
I don't know.
no, just in Matthew and Luke as well, and so there are other details in those, and often the Renaissance painters wouldn't follow one particular story; they would maybe try to do an amalgamation. Not always.
So who are the other 2 people?
Yeah, great question. We'll get to that.
Okay.
All right, so let's just now we've described, we sort of took it all in. What are the things? What are the elements? What are we seeing? Now, how would you you want to kind of consider this. How has the artist organized this work? Thinking about the design of this work. And so is there anything that strikes you about the design? Now, I maybe precluded, I said, where did you see the light? And Jean said she sees it in the center, right? So no surprise in art that where, the center of the things, where is your eye drawn, right? And so the light emanates from where? Behind one of the figures. So immediately you're like, this is the central thing in this piece of art, right? Like this is where I'm supposed to be looking.
Symmetry.
Yeah, there's a symmetry. In fact, it is mathematical. There are sometime in the 17th century, or excuse me, 19th century, somebody took measurements of the points from the hands to the feet of of Moses and Elijah here, which we know where. And it couldn't be a more perfect triangle. Yeah. The picture that I have up here maybe skews that a little bit. It's sort of flattened, but yeah. Anyway, so yeah, there's some real symmetry to what we see here, with one obvious exception, which is this little collection of folk right over here. Yeah.
So it's a right triangle?
No, it's
Equilateral
no,
triangle?
no, but there are repetitive qualities about it. I wish I had grabbed that. It's fascinating. You go look it up, like the symmetry of Raphael's Transfiguration. You could spend an hour talking about that. Yeah, Gary.
It's interesting that he had the three figures in the air levitating.
Great, yeah,
When you first showed it on the screen, I thought ascension,
great, yeah.
you know.
Is he going up? Great, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um,
Something that struck me is the lower right-hand corner there, the sunrise.
yeah, there is a lightning in the, is it sunrise or sunset? But clearly it feels like it's late in the day or early in the morning, right? One or the other, not midday, right? There is also, darkness, right, at the edges, especially up in the sky, right? And so, what does that tell us? And we know in the story, right? The coloring of the three down here of their clothes, that's important. There's more to that. So now, what does the artist seem to be saying by these things that you've described and these things you've considered? What is the artist saying? Obviously the artist is saying the easy one is that this is the central character in this image, right? The one that is literally illuminated, has the back lighting. Every person is either looking at or attempting to look at that figure, right? And so we're to look at that figure.
Another thing is the clothing appears to be floating in some kind of breeze or.
Yeah. There's motion, right? It's not static, right? It's not just a flat thing. There's action happening here. There is motion. The fabric kind of points to that. The clouds seem to kind of add to it. Yeah. What else is happening?
It's ethereal, it's heavenly,
Mhm.
as opposed to grounded.
Right. Yeah. This is really dark and kind of static down here, and this is ethereal and floaty, and yeah.
There's
Yeah.
a tremendous difference in the size of the figures. I mean, the onlookers are very small.
Yeah, it appears that these three. So what might that mean?
And they're more important.
Yeah, perspective they're more important. They might be closer to the viewer and the smaller figures are further away, right? So yeah, it's an interesting wondering. What's the historical context? Now, this is where you start to, obviously you're like, well, I'm looking at this painting and it's hanging in a sacred space. This is probably a sacred painting, meaning it's telling us something about, it's a religious painting. We as Christians quickly identify and say, well, that's gotta be Jesus, right? We're in church, we're in a Christian church. The center of this painting, probably Jesus, Do we necessarily know who these other two people are if we didn't know the story of the Transfiguration? Are there any clues? Yeah. This one on the right has tucked in his arms 2 tablets. Who carries 2 tablets? Moses, yeah. There is not a sort of signature defining thing about Elijah in this painting. There are other artists who pick up on some Elijah symbolism. Old gray-haired man. Yeah. What race are these people?
Caucasian.
They're pretty Caucasian. Yeah. They're at best they're northern Italians, right? They're not even southern Italians, right? Like these are northern Italians, right? Especially these two over here, who are there's a common thing. Let's see if this is where, not the center of this painting, off to the side, looking on, and yet still painted and still included in this painting. These are the people who paid for this painting. These are the patrons of this artwork, whether they were part of the House of Medici or they sponsored or whatever it is. So here they are, right there with Jesus. Isn't that the Transfiguration? So yeah, that's who that is. Okay, fourth step, respond. Does it describe something familiar? We've kind of gotten into that, obviously. I don't know how familiar we are with the Transfiguration story, but certainly for those in the church who hear this story with some frequency, at least annually, it might be familiar. What can you imagine yourself in this scene? I love this question. I don't dress like that. I do like to go hiking to high places, so I can imagine myself at the top of a mountain, but yeah.
Not floating above it though.
Not floating above it, yeah. I think this last question is really the more critical piece here, which is how does it make you feel? What's your feeling? Do you pick up an emotional response to this? Jean was talking about the sort of ethereal quality of it. Does it make you feel kind of light and ethereal?
For me, I see fear in it too.
Fear, yeah,
Fear and
yeah.
trembling.
Yeah, yeah. The difference between, the dramatic difference between the darkness and the light. I mean, it's a full, the full spectrum change, right? And the kind of tumultuous nature of the clouds. There's an anxiety, I think, that comes along with that, for me anyways, and I picked up on some of that. And then why are these guys responding in such dramatic fashion, they're prostrate, they're not standing up. Have they been blown down by the scene? Are they, what is going on? The shielding of the eyes, obviously it's, the brightness.
Is there an air of disbelief?
An air of disbelief, maybe, yeah. It's like questioning what is happening, yeah.
Something that just came to me, it reminds me of the shepherds in the field when the angels appear at Jesus' birth.
Like the shepherds, yeah, like, who are amazed up in the field, yeah, exactly.
I see them trembling and down on the ground.
Gary, what else did you add?
Well, I'm seeing I get a sense of power
Yeah,
from the whole thing.
yeah, there's something powerful at stake here, right? Yeah, yeah.
The energy is emanating from Jesus.
And
the roads are flowing different.
Yeah, and right, yeah, it's sort of exploding from the middle, right? Yeah, absolutely. So then finally, the last step, sorry, Arjun.
I was just gonna say, there's similarities when you get into the era of all these shipwreck paintings.
Yeah.
They're just completely dark and stormy on one side, and then the light behind the shipwreck as it's about to hit.
There's
hundreds of those.
Yeah,
and
right.
It takes this kind of quality.
It was a dark and stormy night. Yeah, exactly, yeah. The last step in art appreciation, right? Remember, this is your introduction to art appreciation. You gotta make a judgment, plain and simple. Do you like it? Do you respond positively to this? Would you hang this on your wall?
Yes.
How much would you pay for it, Gary?
100 million or
100 million. I mean, if I hadn't told you what this was, and I said, there's a guy in Roseville who painted this last week. Maybe you did something pay a little different, but do you value this? Do you find value in this? You need to make a judgment. Yeah, I like that. Or, I like it for what it is, but it's not my style. I wouldn't hang it on my wall. It doesn't match the aesthetic of my home. I don't have Renaissance art on the wall in my house, that kind of thing. So those are the 5 steps. Now you're going to do this several times today, just within your groups, and maybe we'll throw a few things out together, but walk yourself through those. I'll have a little cheater up here for you to remind you of what the steps were. And now I've been also somewhat, I don't know what the word is, deceptive, maybe. This is not the entirety of Raphael's Transfiguration. The actual piece looks like this. So when I described its scale, it's, 10, 12 feet across and 20 feet high or something like that, it's taller than this room. It's because there is a whole other painting underneath it. Anybody want to venture a guess as to what this is? What's happening down here?
Is it post-crucifixion? Is it?
No. But you're, maybe on the right track, in the sense that, the painters of the Renaissance and commissioned painters, were given commissions to tell, and those who design stained glass, and those, the art of the church, right, is to tell the stories of Scripture. And so this is telling the story of Scripture. This is the story of the Transfiguration. And this is the story that we did not read today, which immediately follows the Transfiguration. We got into it because they start to come down. Jesus comes down with Peter, James, and John. And then does anybody remember off the top of their heads?
Kind of healing that happens.
There's a healing, yes, there's a healing. There's a possessed boy who is right here.
That would be me.
Yes, this is Gary. And this is his family. Okay, and including like a mother or a sister or this female figure here in the front this makes one component. And then if you count heads over here, there are 9 people. Who do you think those are? The other disciples. They're the disciples who, in the story says, they're waiting for Jesus to come and heal this boy. They don't know what to do. They've been trying to help him and they can't. And so they're waiting for Jesus. And so there's all this anxiousness. And who are they pointing towards? This disciple is pointing towards Jesus. Yeah, like these pieces, it's one piece. But it's telling, part of the story. And then down here in the foreground is what's believed is Matthew, who has in his lap a book. Who's telling the story. He's sort of pointing, inviting people into this narrative. And it's an interesting technique. And so, yeah, it's fascinating painting. You can spend all day looking at it. Yeah, Scott.
Yeah, I forgot that that's on the bottom. And that changes my attitude toward the whole.
Toward the top, yeah.
Toward the top.
Yeah.
A lot, because the Transfiguration is sort of one point in time, but you got to go back down.
Great.
To real life, and
Yeah.
that's what's happening in the second part.
Yeah. Turns out we don't get one without the other. I think I heard somebody preach about that recently. In case you were wondering, remember the picture of the Mona Lisa and all the people with their iPhones. This is a painting of the wedding procession of Napoleon and Marie Louise of Austria in 1810. He was married in the palace in Paris, and look what's hanging on the wall. Can you make it out?
Yep.
This painting. Yeah. So and this is just a portion this is a really long detail. It's a huge procession, of course. And so this is how the art historians know that the painting hung in the palace for some period of time. Certainly was there in 1810 when Napoleon was married. Eventually, it was returned to the Holy See, and it hangs in the Vatican now. So if you ever wanted to go see Raphael's Transfiguration. Okay, now this is this piece was completed in 1520. What else was happening in about 1520? Anybody want to? The Reformation, right? I mean, this was a really lively time for the church. Now, this is in Italy, and they're just getting wind of this rabble-rouser and all of this, kerfuffle happening up in Germany, right? But interesting stuff. But the story of the Transfiguration has actually been inspiring art long before, right? And And so here are some earlier depictions of the Transfiguration. First here, this is actually an illustration or an illumination in a Bible, or in a version of the gospel, a version of the story of Jesus from a monastery, the Iberon Monastery in Greece, 11th century, so the 1200s. And then this is a Byzantine mosaic dating to about the first half of the 12th century, which is now at the Louvre, but was from the Cappadocia or somewhere like that. I don't know the exact origin of the piece. And then this is an icon, painted wood panel from St. Catherine's Monastery, which is in the Sinai down in Egypt, and that's fascinating. Has anybody ever been there? You can go there. It's a well-known, hard to get to place, but just
Have you been there?
No, I just learned about it, but yeah, someday.
What era?
So that's 12th century. So yeah, so
Oh,
1300s. Yeah, these are within about 100 years of each other. But do you see the point of throwing these three up there now in the art appreciation world also is, comparing pieces, and is there something, the construction or the relative, I mean, what do you see? I don't need to just tell you everything, Steve.
I was noting that in all three, the disciple in the middle is bent over,
Yep.
kneeling down.
Yep.
And
And the other two appear to be just kneeling, right?
is there any indicator of which disciple that's supposed to represent?
Yeah, I skipped over in this one. Let's go back to here where you can see a little bit better. The three disciples here, John customarily is presented in red. Red is the color of love. Green is color of hope. And I'm gonna get it. I got a 50% chance to get it. It's. I don't think it's Peter. I think it's James. And then I think Peter's here in the middle, in the yellow or golden colored or brown colored. And so if you go to these, you see each of them have a different color. And so there's some traditions that equate particular colors to the disciples. And then sometimes if they have things in their hands, right, we can assign, Peter is often depicted with what in his hands? Anybody know? It's not going to be in these pictures, but keys. He has a set of keys because Jesus gives him the keys to the church, right? Yeah, anyway, so, but very, very similar presentations. These are in, three different parts of the world, but really similar, right?
But the Egyptian one, the people are clearly Middle Eastern or dark.
Yeah, dark skin, right? Yeah. Yeah.
These three have halos, and the Da Vinci picture doesn't.
Yeah, no, yeah, the Raphael, yeah. So really common in the early church and continuing today in the Orthodox tradition that any character venerated in a biblical story has a halo. And if you look closely, there is a halo around them. I'm pretty sure you can see it here as well. There, you just have to look really, really close. So very common. Yeah, Michael.
Yeah, just from an artistic standpoint, really, really hard to portray that illumination, that glowing type of thing. And I noticed that all three of these and the Raphael do it by backlighting in a pronounced way.
Right.
And also, there's only two ways you can do it: backlighting and reaction, because you can't get that glow artistically.
Right. And that's going to be a theme that, well, how does the artist in each of these pieces deal with that point, that this story is about blinding light. Was the Raphael blinding? Well, in its contrast, yeah, to the darkness, right, to the corners where it was dark clouds, and but it was behind Jesus. We still could see Jesus's facial features and things like that. We could still make things out. There's another artist coming up, or a couple of artists that treat that a little differently. But yeah. Any other thing that jumps out about you about these 1,000+ year-old depictions of the Transfiguration? Yeah, gee.
For me, color, these are all earth tones or golds and browns.
Yeah.
As opposed to the other one was so dark,
So intense.
blacks, blues.
Way more. I mean, these don't really. There's a little bit of landscape here. No, this is a point with brown rocks. Maybe they're standing on, right? Here they're they feel less attached to ground. Although there's a point there. It looks like Jesus might still be attached to the point of that mountain.
I could also say just a softer tone.
Yeah, softer tones, as it gives it a different feel, right? Yeah. Let's just keep moving here. This is one of my favorite sort of iconographers of the church, Rublev, the icon of the Trinity. I have a copy in my office. It was the one souvenir I came back from Greece with. I bought an icon while I was there of the Trinity. Rublev, and this hangs in the Cathedral of the Annunciation in Moscow, in the Red Square. And Rublev follows that sort of same pattern of that we saw in the last ones with the kneeling. Now here, these two are kneeling, and this one seems to be sort of laying down. And actually, if you look close, the head is at this end, and the feet are up here. Sort of like it's a weird, perspective, right? Yeah, blown over by what's happened up above, maybe, or something along those lines. Yeah. And okay, now in your groups, I want you to contemplate this piece of artwork. This is an early icon done in a kind of Orthodox iconographic style of the Transfiguration. But talk amongst yourselves just for about 4 or 5 minutes. Here's your little art appreciation guide. You can walk through those steps, share what you think with each other, look at it for a few minutes, and then turn to one another and talk about it. Believe it or not, there are actually closer conversation pods. If anybody wants to join Dennis at one of these closer ones. Well, don't block it for everybody.
I'll try not.
It's the detail in the faces is hard to pick up, yeah, especially in this reproduction.
It's just not near before.
Yeah, this is the third thing, like from the middle, kind of put it kneeling, kind of prostrate, head down. There's the head, because it's got the halo.
Peter, yeah, which color is your
Yeah, probably a little more vibrant over there on the TV screen. Our goals on our projector is probably just get more light going.
Right, and down.
shades.
I didn't know the second layer of the red.
It's like,
That's glowing.
yeah, mine are so
All right, anybody have just a revelation about this icon that they want to share? It's dark, yeah, noticeably the coloration is really, really dark. I think it's important to note that the skin colors are dark, right? Yeah, significant, yeah, for us, white Northern European ancestry folk, yeah.
Question here was, who are the figures on each side? Are
Yeah.
the static figures?
Gary, you studied Greek in your seminary, so why don't you come up here and read these Greek titles for us?
I'm sorry, mine is ancient Greek.
Well, this was done, thousands of years ago. Yeah, they're likely the venerated saints attached to this chapel or to because I think they all have halos, yeah.
We were guessing that one might be his mother Mary.
Could be, yeah, they're named, there are indicators, I didn't do the research to find out who.
So they're not four gospel.
They could be, that's often really common, right, yeah, yeah, 4. Although I think this is a female figure here, because it has the habit, kind of that habit, the hair is covered and so.
But the colors have changed over the couple hundred.
Sure, yeah, and Gene was even noticing, if you can see the TV screen, it even looks more vibrant over on the screen over there. So some of it is just the limitation of the projection that we're dealing with today too, so.
So we noticed the color red.
Yeah, red, right, really, really pop, and red in the middle here, right, and red theoretic from that other study I did was, suggest that's the disciple John, the one whom Jesus loved.
The 3 triangle things lift up Jesus.
Yeah, and just like in the I don't know if we took note of that in this, there are lines drawn that create sort of a star off of the Jesus figure. They're very faint in these, but they're there. And that becomes a theme that gets translated a lot, that there's this physical kind of connection between, and the artist draws in these lines. There's something's going on between these people or between these figures, right? What is that all about? It makes you wonder. All right, let's go on. Well, did anybody want to buy this piece? I'm curious. No, no one's got the perfect spot for this in their house. Okay. All right, another sort of late Renaissance painter, Carracci. Carracci, I don't know if I'm saying that right. This came out of the National Gallery in Scotland. Scott found most of these pieces, by the way, and I just took what he found. I was like, we'll work with this, like there's so much out there, of course. He actually didn't find didn't use the Raphael. There have been a lot of artists have copied the Raphael. Very few of them copy the bottom part, and they just focus on the formulation of the Transfiguration at the top. And he had found that, and I was like, I think there's more to this story, and that put me down the rabbit hole of like, oh yeah, and that's when I found out, most famous painting in the world before the Mona Lisa, yeah, all that kind of stuff. So, anyways, another kind of nice, softer features. I mean, we're in that Renaissance realism, right? Like where these are actual, like it looks like someone we would know, could be somebody we know. A painting that is more realistic, flowy gowns. Here the prostration is like on the floor, like they're just like couldn't get harder pressed down to the ground in this picture, and it's a little bit dark. Okay. Since we have done so much work with the St. John's Bible this year, I thought this would be fun to have us think about this. Now, Donald Jackson was the primary artist for this illumination, but with contributions from Aidan Hart. I think you guys should talk about this one in your groups and see what kind of things jump out at you, and then we'll come back together. So you got about 4 minutes.
A lot more abstract.
Yeah, the Moses and Elijah represent. Jesus sort of feels yeah, he's got books. Yeah, books. The red figure has books in his arm.
Oh, yeah.
Or they're also red. Yeah. Yeah.
The bottom of the top.
He's got tan underneath.
Then it's Moses.
That's like.
Why only two?
Here, you come back.
Yeah, it could be buildings. Yeah, like that looks sort of like a cathedral dome or something like that, and that could be, it's not like the Abbey. One of
Right,
one of
right,
those
one of them,
illuminations
right.
has the Abbey in it. Yeah, yeah.
Here you can make Jesus whatever color.
Great. The eyes are really interesting. Like Jesus is looking at you.
Yeah.
Like there's no.
Look at me.
Yeah. Well, let's see. All right.
What epiphanies, since this is the last day of Epiphany, what epiphanies have you had about this representation of the Transfiguration?
Elijah are waiting for somebody to take the picture.
They're posed. Yeah, they're kind of posed. Who are they looking at? It kind of looks, I think they're looking at us. Who is Jesus looking at? Definitely us. But that all white, face with light detail, but then those eyes are just, and they are looking right at you. Yeah.
When it first came on the screen, I thought of Star Trek.
Yeah.
Beaming up, Scotty. All his molecules or atoms are.
Oh, right, like he's being formed, right? Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is, if you click on the interactive site, this is a note that the artists share. What is it? What is Jesus's form and is made of? They look like stars, or they're crosses. It's lots of little white crosses.
Big cross right behind his head.
Yeah, and then it kind of does look like maybe that's the gold back here. It looks like he might be kind of on a cross. Maybe it's a foreshadow, like that's not unusual, right? Scott?
In many of the illuminations, Jesus doesn't have a face in the St. John's Bible. It's just a blank.
Yeah.
But here, there's actually a face drawn on it.
Yeah, interesting. There is some feature. It is noticeably different than the other two figures, right? The painting of the other two figures is reminiscent of what style? Is it more like Rublev or more like the icons? More like the icons, yeah. It's a flat two-dimensional outline, but the black outlining is consistent with the icon style, iconography. Jesus is really interesting. Audrey, who knows, as you all know, knows a fair amount of the story behind the Bible or behind St. John's and Donald Jackson's work. Yeah, he doesn't portray Jesus, except here we get just a little definition, just enough to know that there's a human figure there with a beard. He could be any race, right? He's not white. He is he's the absence of color in this case, right? Yeah. Michael.
There's a really interesting thing visually, which is figure ground kind of thing. You can see it as Jesus' form as kind of a solid sphere or cylinder, and it's coming into the foreground, or you can see it as not that and all receding into the background. So there's kind of a definitive shape there. And that play between is it real in the foreground or is it receding into the background has almost like you can give them a suggestion of omissions.
Important to note that it's not real obvious when you're sitting at it, looking at it from a distance, but down here is the text of the passage, and this is my son, the beloved. And then in a much lighter kind of gray, listen to him. It says that's the text being quoted from Mark 9. Yeah, Steve. Last thought on this one.
Yeah, Luke, the Gospel of Luke says that when Moses and Elijah appeared, they talked to him about his departure for Exodus, meaning his death. And so with the cross behind and the use of the crosses, I think that may be part of it there. And I don't know where this is pictured in the St. John's Bible, if it's connected with the Luke telling of the story or not, but Luke is specific to say they talked to him about his leaving.
Yeah, it maybe looks more conversational. Yeah. The darkness in the background, and then what is embedded within that darkness is all this gold detailing, and we know from our St. John's introduction, gold means God, right? And so God is here, God is in this background, God is in that cross shape that we're seeing behind Jesus. That maybe Audrey and I wandered over to the screen and see. It looks like maybe these are these could be the outlines of buildings in the background. That looks like a dome, like could be like a cathedral dome or something, and these look like some kind of building outlines up here. It's really hard to see from where you're sitting, but and might be referencing particular places, but I don't have that information per se. Okay, that's that. Let's look at some more contemporary work. These are three pieces, artists from different parts, one from Oklahoma, one from Ontario, Canada, and one from Mike Myers. These are all living artists who have painted the Transfiguration. What do you see happening in these pieces that's dramatically different than the pieces that we've considered so far?
The illuminated background.
There's an illumination in, where the light here is centered on this figure up on the top of this point. Here it seems to be in the center and coming from behind, and yet the light on these faces is sort of on those faces as well, and maybe sort of hiding this. Where's the light here? It's sort of on this.
That one from
It
Oklahoma,
almost looks like a stairway, right? Yeah.
that one from Oklahoma on the left, that looks like an Indian chief's address.
Oh, like a headdress up here. Yeah.
Must be the Oklahoma.
Yeah, there is a figure in there. It's faint, pretty faint. And then this is a figure here, and there's a figure here and a figure here. So what's not in this painting?
The sick child.
No, for sure. Yeah, there's none of that. Although there's a lot of action down here. There's like, if you look over on the TV screen, you almost see more definition, but
Moses and Elijah.
no, yeah, no Moses or Elijah.
Couldn't it be 2,000?
Well, I mean, yeah, but there's three, right? There's three figures. So yeah, are Moses and Elijah two of those and then one of the disciples, or yeah, it's, we don't know. And then here we've got this figure, which is sort of the largest figure. And then there are three figures next to that. This one is white, is sort of illuminated. Is that Jesus? And then there are two figures standing on these stairs, or what sort of elevated away. Might those be Moses and Elijah? Is Jesus sort of still getting to the place of transfiguration? Is he sort of headed that way? Sort of, that's the impression I get in that painting.
So in the text, I was given the impression that it was like Jesus was being welcomed to the club of these other two people, and there was more equality with the three of them. But in all the pictures, Jesus is really primary, and the other two are very secondary.
Yeah, the centrality of Jesus didn't come across the way the story's told in Mark to you, and yet all the artists really centralized Jesus. I mean, God speaks in the story, right? And God only speaks about one of them. He speaks about Jesus, and so God's focus is on Jesus in the story. Yeah, but yeah, Steve.
I think going back to the Oklahoma one, the Gospels in telling the story end by saying, and they saw Jesus only. And so I think maybe it's part of the answer.
Towards the end. Yeah, good point. Yeah, they saw Jesus alone. That's right. That's right. Thank you. Yeah, important detail. All right. This was the one that we've been advertising this picture along with this forum series, but I thought this one was fascinating. This is a Nigerian artist. I did a little research on him. He does commissioned work for the church in not only in Nigeria, but a number of West African countries. He's very prolific and paints on the, like in the style of Da Vinci, paints on the wall in the churches, some canvas work as well. What do you see here? You can talk, let's just do this one as a group. We've got just a couple of minutes. So throw some things out here real quick. What do you see? How's this comparing and contrasting to the pieces we've already looked at?
They're dark skinned.
Yeah, and any, they look sort of authentically African in some way, right? Yeah. You might have guessed that even not knowing the artist's name or his location.
They're all looking at.
And the three figures are in the foreground. Yeah, that's a really dramatic. Yeah, and where are the disciples? Behind them, and which direction is Jesus facing? He's facing us, not the disciples, right? Yeah, very interesting, right? And you get a different feeling as a result. It just tells the story a little different. Yeah, the palette is uniquely very African, right? Look at Jesus's outfit compared to the other outfits. Jesus wears the most colorful. So in this case, the illumination, the transfiguration is to add color, to bring life to it. Now, if you think of the outfits that our brothers and sisters in Africa, when they get dressed up, they're the ones that they are most proud of. They are the most colorful and vibrant and just full of expression. The outfits that they wear. Yeah, interesting. And so which one's Moses?
Staff.
He's got a staff. Yeah, that was a conscious decision, not tablets, but Moses with the staff. Do you have any trouble figuring out that's Moses? I mean, like, oh yeah, sure, that's Moses, right? So he's got a staff, which also kind of more resonant with, think about all the African shepherds and farmers who have their staves that they walk around with and stuff. Yeah.
Opening the sea also.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Moses' staff that he uses to part the Red Sea. the disciples are still shielding their eyes, so there's still light. And, there's a brilliance to it. So, yeah, great piece. I really love this.
I think it goes more with what Peter was saying, that the three look a little bit more, threesome rather than God.
Right.
Jesus being so predominant.
This is sort of a package.
Yeah.
This piece entitled The Transfiguration was painted just last year for Epiphany. It was a commissioned piece by this artist, Jim Day, who is an Episcopalian in the Diocese of Maine. This is a fascinating piece. Who's in this piece? Jesus. Yeah. Where's everybody else? Where's the rest of the story? It's all in Jesus. It's in his face, and it's in his eyes, and it's in this, all of it around there. Like you have to, and I would love to see this piece because it's very, I guess it's really quite three-dimensional. Like it's really textural, right? And the artist wrote sort of his philosophy. I'll read this quick. I found myself focused on two major themes this season as a time when the true nature of Christ was slowly being revealed, and the culmination of that revelation in the last reading of the season, the Transfiguration. Having first created a layered image where the underlying icon of Christ was discovered as two overlying canvases were pierced and rolled back. I moved towards a more overt depiction of the Transfiguration for the second image. I began by revisiting an older canvas that I had never been quite happy with and reworked the figure, adding many layers of color and texture. I looked at many images of the Transfiguration, but the only image that truly worked for me was the resurrection panel from the Eisenheim altarpiece by Matthias Grunewald. This made sense to me as the Transfiguration can be seen as a kind of foreshadowing of the resurrection, at least on a visual level. I went looking and found that panel, the resurrection panel from the Eisenheim altarpiece, done in 1516. Matthias Grunewald, one of the celebrated artists of the Lutheran Reformation movement. So this Episcopalian in Maine today, or last year, draws his inspiration for Jesus's face from this detail right here. And interestingly enough, that took me down a rabbit hole that Matthias Grunewald did this. This is his Transfiguration. The only time he did anything labeled the Transfiguration was this image right here, which is what? One of the disciples hiding their face from the parents. That's it. That's all he chose to reveal. And so that piece of the story was the important piece to him, was the disciples' reaction, the way he depicts it. Yeah. And then there's this really a wonderful piece from Father John Giuliani. I don't think there's a relation, but what do we see here? This is the Transfiguration, but he's transformed something very dramatically. He's depicted the characters of the Transfiguration as Native American elders, right? And as a Catholic priest and son of an Italian immigrant, I bear the religious and ethnic burden of ancestral crimes perpetuated on the first inhabitants of the Americas. Many have been converted to Christianity, but in doing so, some find it difficult to retain their indigenous culture. My intent, therefore, in depicting Christian saints as Native Americans is to honor them and to acknowledge their original spiritual presence on this land. It is the original Native American spirituality that I attempted to celebrate in rendering the beauty and excellence of their craft, as well as the dignity of their persons. And this one really blew my mind, this silver dolly. I got some ideas about it, but yeah, exactly. And so, which one are you gonna buy today? They're all for sale. None of them are. Thank you all for your participation in today's forum. I was grateful to be here with you. That's it. That's all we got.